Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. We are thrilled to be presenting a 7-part series with our fantastic partner, Maze Row Wine Merchant. We are proud to present this series of interviews, diving deep into the heritage and legacy of Maze Row's excellent Italian producers. Tune in every Saturday from March 5th through to April 16th. As we take an intimate look at these respected historic producers and their role as part of the Maze Row family of luxury wines. And remember to check out our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, for incredible video content featuring a visit to Argiano.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to Andrea Pieropan for joining us today as well. My name is John Irwin, and I represent Maze Row Wine Merchants, an importer for wines, including Pieropan in the United States. And I'm also an Italian wine ambassador, like some of you may be as well. So I just wanted to jump right in here. Andrea, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of your estate. We're going to talk about those beautiful wines that you make. And of course, what I'm really interested in talking about today too is the new cantina that you just opened as well. So if you want to take yourself off mute here and just say hi to the fine people here in Clubhouse.
Ciao, John.
Ciao, ciao, ciao. ¿Cómo stai? How is everything?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
What about you?
I am doing really well. I'm actually in Calistoga today, traveling in Napa. So you and I were in 2 wine regions across the world from each other, but I want to focus on your wine region, first and foremost, Soave Classico. So I'll just give you a brief introduction here for those of you who may be new to Pieropan. I'm sure you have heard the name before, but this is Andrea Pieropan, 4th generation, I believe, Andrea, winemaking for Pieropan, with an estate that has existed since 1880, located in Soave Classico. And famously, of course, I have a certain bias towards Pieropan, but I believe Pieropan is the first family of Soave for a few different historical reasons that we'll get into in just a second. So, Andrea, I want to turn it over to you, and I want to ask you if you can give us a little bit of a historical perspective on your family. When did the winery start? Talk a little bit about the different generations that have influenced Pieropan over the years, what they've brought to it, and then also a little history of Soave mixed in. I'll ask you questions, of course, if there's anything that comes up, but I want to hand it over to you if you can give a little history of Pieropan as an estate.
Ciao, John. Yes, I'm as you say, I'm the 4th generation of Pieropan's family with my brother Dario. And but before us, the first one has been Leonildo Pieropan on 1880s, as you said, who was was a surgeon. He wasn't a winemaker. He was technically a doctor, but fortunately for us, he left the job because it becomes scary about the blood. So if you want to be surgeon and you're scary about the blood, definitely doesn't work.
Yeah.
And he had got a couple of hectares of lands mainly in the Calvarinos area, and he started to make a sweet wine called Recioto di Soave because from his knowledgeable for his doctor studies, he probably knows the biological process of the organism, and then he started to make some wine. He had got 3 sons, Fausto, Gustavo, and Giulio. Giulio became engineer, not involved in this business, and Fausto and Gustavo continued the job of the father without being winemakers. But from 3 sons, from 3 men, we had got just 1 son, Leonildo, from Fausto, my father. Leonildo became graduated in winemaking school in Conegliano on 1966. And after he became graduated, he invested to buy the most beautiful vineyard in the Soave Classico, because at that time Pieropan was already in the production of wine, but we weren't independent in terms of vineyard. So he bought several vineyards. Calvarino was already part of the family, but arrived La Rocca, for example, 1976, and many other vineyards located in the Classico zone. From my father, he had got two sons, me and my brother Dario. Dario is the winemaker because he's graduated in winemaking school in University in Udine, and I have done after a winemaking school in San Michele al Adige, I've done agronomist studies in the University of Padua. So in our family business, we run two parts differently. One is Dario take care about the vinification of the wine, and I take care about the job in the vineyard.
I'm so interested in this idea that your great-grandfather was a surgeon because famously, one thing that's been said about your father, Franco Allegrini said that if your father didn't become a winemaker, he would have been a watchmaker. Referencing the fact that there has always been a level of precision and detail and care in your winemaking, and it seems to be almost genetic that you bring this very there. As I've talked to you in the past, there's certainly a scientific approach to the wine, but what I find so exciting about your wines is it's married with this understanding that the terroir is going to give you what it gives you. Do you ever think about that tension, or do you consider that idea of how do you manage, making the best possible wine versus making the wine that a specific vineyard might give you, like Calvarino or La Rocca?
I think the careful of the details is a part of the characteristic of the Pieropan, and in particular, we from my father and now us, we want to get the opportunity as more as possible that the glass of wine is talking about the territory where we come from. So to make wine like this, you have to be a good listener more than a good talker, which mean understand the potential of the territory. Don't make necessary every time the wine that you want to show, but have the attention and the sensibility to show what the territory wants to show, and this is not banal in my opinion.
I want to back up to get to Calvarino and La Rocca, your two single vineyard wines, watershed wines for Soave Classico. But since we're on this topic, I do want to mention the first time I ever met you, Andrea, you said something really interesting to me, and it was like a lightning bolt, that you were explaining that many people can make good wines now. The science, the technology has caught up to make good wines. And now it's really, quality wine is really more about what you're saying, listening instead of talking. And was that something that has always been since, in your family, this idea of delivering this idea of terroir? Or did you get to a place where the wine technology caught up, where you felt like you really could deliver terroir in a specific way and you sought that out?
I think it was something that my father has always introduced in his part of life, because Papa has been the first one to introduce the single vineyard in this land, with Calvarino in 1971, with La Rocca on 1978. So you don't make a single vineyard at the beginning or at the end of the 1970s if you don't have the sensibility to understand that a terroir can be better than others, and then must be expressed in the wine. So I think the sensibility and also the humility to understand the potential, and not to be the protagonist of your wine, but be an instrument of your wine to develop the territory in the glass, is something that you cannot learn. You cannot learn in any book or whatever. it's like watching something that could be art or whatever, and appreciate it if it's well done or not. So if you have the sensibility to understand and to appreciate what is nice, what is beautiful, you have it. If you don't, you don't have it.
Yeah, for all the science that goes into wine in terms of, chemical signatures and the things that we think of when we think of aromatics that come out of wine, esters, it's amazing how philosophical wine can remain, despite how much precision can be brought to winemaking. I want to talk about that moment in the 1970s, particularly that first vintage of Calvarino in 1971. And so, for those of you in the clubhouse right now that are not familiar with the wine, Calvarino was the first single vineyard Soave Classico. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but I believe it was also the first Soave Classico to really be aged for any significant amount of time before release. Is that accurate?
What do you mean? If
It's been about a. I'm not sure if the winemaking was the same back then, but it would spend a year on the lees in fiberglass lined concrete tanks.
Yeah, Calvarino start to be not immediately, not since 1971. Start to do an extra year of aging in the cement tanks with fiberglass wall, but the choice to give also for Calvarino an extra year of aging, as was already done since the beginning with La Rocca, was done in 2003. Because we understood that the Calvarino potential was appear better when the wine remain longer in the cellar. So and then to be not confused with the Soave Classico, we choose in the 2003 to get an extra year of aging to place Calvarino as La Rocca. Releasing 1 year later.
I see. Okay. And in 1971, releasing a single vineyard watershed in Italy generally, because I think as we've talked about before, it wasn't uncommon for wines made from international varieties, especially white wines, to be single vineyard. Yerman's vintage Tunina came out around then. Gaia was playing with international varieties and Livio Faluga. But I'm interested in the fact that your father was so committed to native varieties specifically, and especially in a region that at the time wasn't known for terroir-driven single vineyard wines. I believe at the time there was probably oceans of Soave being imported into the United States that was made as more of a simple quaffing wine. Is that right?
Yeah, as you say, La Rocca in the specific was born almost around the years of those wines that you mentioned, but the big one of the big difference comparing those wines was that my father trusted that this project was possible to make with indigenous grapes, with a local grapes, in this specific case with Garganega. So the project is big because not only because he trusted it was possible to make a great wine with 1 year of aging, fermentation and aging on oak, but because he trusted it was possible with a Garganega grapes that, as you say, was in the common idea for everybody, and a grape just for massive production. So now it's quite simple and easy to talk about this, but almost 45 years ago was definitely not so easy.
Yeah, and here in the United States, it's not uncommon for us now to find Grillo by the glass on a wine list, or Caricante, or some other native grapes. But I find it so remarkable, the vision that your father had to make a single vineyard varietally built Garganega native varietal wine in 1978. And to think that now we sort of seek these native varieties out, but at that time, it just wasn't happening. People were really leaning on international varieties more, especially in areas like Friuli. And so for everybody in the clubhouse now, we're talking about the first vintage of La Rocca, which was in 1978. This was the first single vineyard oak-aged Soave Classico. And one story that I find fascinating, Andrea, that you've told me about before is that you struggled to sell this wine in Italy initially. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it has been very difficult at the beginning for my father, obviously, for propose this wine because between when it born and I want to say beginning of the 1990s, so for we can say 15 years more or less, it was technically impossible to sell this wine in Italy because. As we discussed, the general opinion, the common idea was that the white wine generically was just to drink extremely fresh and young. So 1-2 months after the harvest. In particular, Soave. It was the years of Bolla, was the years of big, massive volume Soave in the US market, but also here in Italy. And because we don't have technically comparison with French wine or something like that, the consuming of wine in Italy was 99% domestic wine. So the comparison was not existing. People simply don't approach to a wine like this because it was 1 year older, fermented and aged on oak, and was still called Soave. So all those things was exactly going in the opposite direction of what my father project wants to show. And this project could be continuous just because has been well accepted outside of Italy, UK, Canada, US, Japan, and that gave the force for my father to continue this project. Otherwise, if we will be not like this, we will not probably hear to talk anymore about La Rocca. Just the beginning of the 90s, when start to born Gambero Rosso, Slow Wine, Ice Sommelier, so the first Italian wine magazine, also Italian market start to recognize this wine and appreciate his quality.
Was that Luigi Veronelli's wine writing that started to promote Pieropan broadly, or was it something else?
Luigi Veronelli arrived earlier than those magazine, arrived in the 70s, and was a very big fan of Calvarino. In fact, he have seen once have say that Calvarino is like a blue jacket for a man. What mean that is something that every man has to have it in his cupboard because in case you get the party, in case you have to go to the funeral, in case you have to go to work, and a blue jacket makes every man always comfortable, no? And in this sense, Calvarino is so suitable, so versatile wine that it will be never miss in any fridge. This was the meaning of these sentences of Luigi Veronelli about Calvarino in this specific case.
I love that. And so I wish for everybody on this call to have a bottle of Calvarino in their fridge at all times. It's as useful as a blue jacket or a little black dress. So I'm so fascinated within the context of what your father did, first single vineyard oak aged, even being beyond where the market was ready. You told me though a story where your father snuck the wine into a tasting of Burgundy. Is that accurate? The La Rocca?
It wasn't a tasting of organized from my father with some Gambero Rosso taster at the winery. He put an older bottle of La Rocca in a Burgundy tasting, and was fun because in a blonde tasting, when they discover those 20 wines, La Rocca arrived second in terms of scores. And then that was also the beginning of the understanding of La Rocca for those journalists, and also for the market in Italy. We're talking about.
Yeah, it wasn't long after that, I think, that Gambero Rosso actually named La Rocca their white wine of the year in the early 2000s.
Was 1998 the vintage.
98,
so
sorry.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of the 2000. Yeah.
You mentioned the suitability of Barberino. Its ability to work across different cuisines and different occasions. But can you speak a little bit more broadly, just to kind of set the table for Soave wine? To you, can you describe Soave wine? And to you, can you just say what you think makes a great Soave wine in terms of flavors and profile?
Soave wine or Pieropan?
Soave wine and Pieropan specifically. So both, if you don't mind.
I prefer to talk about Pieropan.
Pieropan. Pieropan. Well, I guess we can say comfortably that a great Soave wine is Pieropan. So let's talk about Pieropan. What is a typical flavor profile for Pieropan?
For us, as we have always done wine gastronomic, always, even the years where it was very unpopular, we always worked to have a wine with in our opinion, a correct alcohol content that makes the wine very pleasant to drink with food, many type of food, because in my opinion, when the alcohol is too high, it kills a bit the taste of the cuisine, and this is not something that we definitely don't want for our wine. The using of Garganega and Trebbiano di Soave without malolactic helps to have more freshness and more character of the terroir, because anytime that you have too much malo in the wine, in my opinion, the wine should looks like too much global in taste and less connect with the terroir. And this is something that Pieropan, for example, doesn't like much. So we want the connection with the territory, and then we maintain the freshness and the acidity exactly for this reason, because give more drinkability with food, and at the same time has more connection with the territory. The white, in the younger expression, the aroma can be recognized with some peaches, apricot, blossom, flowering aroma, cherry, almond blossom, with a touch of pear, because this comes from the Trebbiano di Soave, which gives the acidity, and obviously, if you don't use Trebbiano di Soave but you use the Chardonnay, this is a completely different result. But we haven't Chardonnay in our blend. Different stories definitely with La Rocca, because it's 100% Garganega, picked very, very ripe. The overripe character give an extra flavor with much more complexity. So the fruit goes more into the tropical notes, some pineapple, some mango, some tropical character that are less in the fresher version.
Yeah, and so to bring this down to some technical information. So as many of you probably know, Soave Classico, the indigenous varieties that are allowed in Soave Classico are Garganega and Trebbiano di Soave. Trebbiano di Soave is genetically, and I'm using air quotes here, the same as Verdicchio, but this is a specific biotype that's native to Soave Classico. And however, you're also allowed to use Chardonnay in the blend. However, Pieropan never uses Chardonnay. They only focus on the native varieties. You mentioned that Trebbiano di Soave gives a little bit more acidity to the wine. And you mentioned the power of And just to back up, Trebbiano di Soave is in Calvarino, 30%. So it's a 70-30 blend. Garganega to Trebbiano di Soave in Calvarino. And La Rocca is 100% Garganega. Was there a specific reason why you chose Garganega, 100% Garganega for the La Rocca bottling in that specific vineyard versus the 30% Trebbiano di Soave in the Calvarino vineyard?
Because in La Rocca, the project was since the beginning to get in overripe fruit, and this is possible with Garganega grapes, much more complicated with Trebbiano because Trebbiano mature too early to enjoy the overripe. Because with Garganega we go until the end of October, where there are the optimum conditions for the overripe grape. Different stories for Trebbiano because Trebbiano mature in September. September is too warm, too much light still on, and then it's hard to have the botrytis in September. Because La Rocca project was an extra character in fruit, was suitable for Garganega and not for Trebbiano. In the opposite, in the Calvarino, we have a blend of Garganega and Trebbiano di Soave, because Calvarino represents the most typical, probably, expression of a volcanically soil, where Trebbiano gives a lot in the basin tufa soil. So it's the perfect place where can be cultivated.
That volcanic soil really gives the wine some minerality as well, some really distinct minerality, which adds just this beautiful textural component to the wine. Can you talk a little bit about the new winery? I think this is important. This is big for Pieropan to be moving from the old cantina to the new cantina. Tell us about the new winery. Tell us when it opened and how are things going.
The project of the new winery has been finished last September after 5 years of an amazing job, because we have just to think that we removed 120,000 meter cube of soil, which is the same amount of soil if you put on a line of truck from Verona to Venice, so 90 kilometers of highway. Okay, so it's an amazing amount of soil. Removed all of them because the cantina is completely integrated in the bottom part of this hill, and in fact is covered for 3 sides of 4. And just one front is offering outside, and is all covered with the stones. So it's a whole project to be mitigated in the classical area of Soave, to be perfectly integrated. Is a project very new because it has a lot of things that works in a sustainability way. We have a system to cover the water on top of the roof, so that the water is covered to be reused for the irrigation. Because it's inside of the hill, we have a temperature control naturally much better than many other situations. So there are many things that has been well considered. Has been thought from my father that unfortunately couldn't see the end of this project. And for us was also a mission to finish this winery, because it's a winery dedicated to our father Leonildo.
It's absolutely stunning. I had the chance to visit it last year, and your father sadly passed away in 2018. And so a vision of your father, but carried on by you and your brother Dario. What I find so amazing about the winery is that when we initially heard that you were going to be building a new cantina, there was, we in the United States were, of course, at first we thought, oh no, because your previous winery was in your family home. It was so charming, so intimate. But what I learned in arriving at your new winery is that it's not just for Pieropan. This winery is so beautiful and so stunning, it really elevates Soave Classico as a whole. So congratulations on the new space. And I just want to comment, it's so big, Andrea, you're going to be incredibly thin and in shape walking around that winery, trying to get from room to room. I know Dario had a little scooter that he was using to get around when I was there.
Yeah. Yes, he has a small scooter, electric scooter, yeah, to move because it's too big. In a large space, was thought to be able to make also a lot of things, and things as the opportunity to mature some vintages of Calvarino, La Rocca, all things that could not possible to do in the other winery because the space was so limited, and that was not permit makes also those beautiful projects. One of them will be presented soon at the inauguration of the winery, the 14th of April, because we are going to present a wine thought since the beginning to celebrate the new winery, and is Calvarino Cinque. Cinque is 5 in Italian, and is a blend of 5 vintages of Calvarino, matured quite long time in the cellar and blended just last year. We are talking about a blend of 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. Matured, so the youngest matured at least 10 years, the older one 14 years, and blended last year to celebrate the new winery. It's a new, unique project for a special thing.
It's really exciting. I can't wait to taste it. Talk as well about the new plantings that you have on the roof of the building. There's a hectare on the roof of the building as well, and you mentioned it's covered on 3 sides. And for those of you listening, truly, it folds in the landscape. It's literally built into the hill. What do you have planted on the roof, and what are you hoping to do with that space?
On top of the roof, we planted an experimental vineyard made with PV variety. PV are the variety resistant to the main fungus that attacked the plant. The variety is a Pinot Blanc because it's not available Garganega and Trebbiano Soave in the market. So the idea that the project could be makes a wine 100% sustainable, because even if the winery is already certificated organic since 10 years, as you know, organic doesn't give 100% of sustainability because you use copper and sulfur. You don't use many pesticide, you don't use many chemical from synthesis, but you don't have zero impact. What is interesting about this project is that potentially we can have a cultivation of plant with zero impact in the ground, and then will be nice thing to start as a pioneerist wine with a wine 100% sustainable in any part, even up, because if you don't do contamination but you produce green mass, because the leaves remain obviously and the cane and the shoots remain in the ground, you get more than what you pick. So this is more or less the pilot project that we want to bring.
It's beautiful, and there's a clear line of innovation that runs through Pieropan throughout the history. And I think what's so amazing about the winery over the decades is that you've maintained this sense of heritage, with native varieties and non-interventionist winemaking, and yet you always have an eye on how you can improve wine, not just for yourselves, but for the larger world around you, as evidenced with Calvarino, La Rocca, and now with these experimental plantings you have now. I want to pause there. I want to just invite anybody to throw a question that they may have in the chat. And I want to close, Andrea. I'll give you the final word, but something I want to quote to you is something that Ian D'Agata wrote in 2018. And I find this to be an incredibly powerful statement about Pieropan. And he says, I was in my teens when, thanks to my dad, I tasted my first great Italian wine. It was Pieropan's 1971 Soave Calvarino. No Italian white wine I had ever tasted up to that point was remotely close to the quality of that wine. I still remember every drop. The fourth time I drank a truly great white wine from Italy was a couple of years later, which tells you just how hard it was to come by great Italian white wines. This time it was Pieropan's 1979 Soave Calvarino. That may help put things into perspective. Pieropan has accompanied my life in wine and has done so with grace and style.
Yeah, is true. And in joking with him once in Rome, he told me that, and thanks of those wine, now I decided to, because as you probably know, before of what is now, he was a pediatric. He was a doctor. He was living in Canada, and he was a pediatric, so a doctor of child. And because of this good wine, he changed his profession, he changed his job, and he became a critic of wine.
Pieropan, turning doctors to wine lovers since 1880. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Again, if there are any last minute questions here, you can always throw them into the chat. But Andrea, thank you for spending the time with us today. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. And I just want to congratulate you and thank you for the incredible integrity that you and your brother bring to your winemaking. The wines are absolutely spectacular. The 2019 La Rocca and Calvarino have sold out in the United States, and we're looking forward to the 2020 arriving in the next month or so. So thank you so much. I do see one question here from Paul. He wants to know, and this is a great question, Andrea, at what age does Calvarino develop bottle-aged flavors?
Today we have opened a few bottles. There was here and a couple of clear person. One was the sommelier of the Shangri-La. Just a few hours later, he left our office. He was a sommelier of Shangri-La from Paris. We opened a beautiful Calvarino 2013 and a wonderful 2010. But last Monday we opened a 2003, for example, Calvarino. What age? It depend also from the vintages. I want to say at least Calvarino start to show his character, his potential, at least after 5 years. But how long will appear those characteristic? Part of this depends also from the character of the vintage. But we can easily say that our wine got easily over 15, 20 years. Because we opened in this 2003 last Monday. We were here with the restaurant that was a 2 Michelin star, and today he did the order. Just this one did.
Is it the same for La Rocca as well?
Yeah, I want to say that La Rocca maybe needs at the beginning needs a couple of years, a little bit before, because we have to. The effect of the oak need a little bit more time to be integrated in taste. So comparing Calvarino, which is immediately probably advert, La Rocca has this first couple of years that need times, but after that age as Calvarino supremely well.
Very good. Well, we don't have any other questions, so I think we covered a lot of ground here, Andrea, and I just want to congratulate you again on the new cantina. And looking forward to seeing you at Vin Italy. For those of you who may be attending Vin Italy, we look forward to seeing you as well. And thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated.
Okay. Ciao, John. Grazie.
Ciao.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our new Maze Row Wine Merchants series that focuses on excellence, family, legacy, sincerity, and innovation. Tune in next Saturday for the next installment featuring another in-depth and intimate conversation with the heritage Italian wine producers that form the core of the Maze Row Italian wine family. To learn more about Maze Row Wine Merchant and today's featured producer, see our show notes and visit their websites. Don't forget to subscribe and like our show and tune in to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods. guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.